I figured, well, the yogis used to be vegetarian, so that makes sense. And so it was great because I went, there were some really kind yogis who happened to be vegan who kind of was like, oh, if you're vegetarian, it's not really great for the cows, and started explaining to me about the rennet and different products. But I still needed a gentle stepping stone. And so I kind of went about 95% plant-based until 2016. And that's when I just made the shift in the heart as I see it. It became an added element of embracing Ahimsa and being kind and compassionate towards all beings. So it extended past just my own selfish reasons for being plant-based.
Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete podcast. We are Jess and Beej, and you know it, we are on a mission to create a better world. Following our hearts and intuitive hits, we were led to the creation of this podcast. And for the past 250 plus episodes, we've been honored to share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose. There are so many people in this world making powerful and positive impacts, and today we get to share the mic with one of those gorgeous beings. Holly Skodis is a yogi who for the past 2 decades has studied the ancient science of yoga that typically begins on the mat, but through repetitive practice has the power to transform the life of its practitioner. This is true for our story. As most of you know, YogiTriathlete was born in an instant during one of my quiet practices. And from what I know of Holly's story, this type of intuitive directive rings true for her as well. Holly is a yoga instructor, certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator, podcast host, and the founder of Yoga is Vegan, which is a project focused on inspiring yogis to go vegan. This project started with a collection of articles from vegan yoga teachers and students sharing their perspectives on why yoga is vegan. Its latest evolution comes into form as a fundamental component of the upcoming Yoga Goes Vegan one-day virtual retreat on March 20th, which has been declared Meet Out Day since 1976, which I had no idea. We are super pumped to dive into her story and expand awareness around the subject matter of Ahimsa, which is a guiding force for BJ and I as we navigate this rich itinerary called life. Holly, welcome to the show.
Oh, that was such a beautiful introduction. I have to steal it. That was so good. Thank you. Wow, that sounds nice.
You can steal it. All you need to do is sit in front of your computer, close your eyes, say, give me the words, and go.
Yeah. Thank you. I
that's all I do.
Well, yeah, that was really nice. And it is an honor for me to be on this podcast today. You inspire me. Triathletes inspire me so much. Like for me to run, I had to train myself to start to run and begin to like it. So I am that opposite energy. And I'm always in awe of those who can do all of it and who are vegan. So thank you so much again for having me on today.
Yes, well, you know, I am the girl who bought a shirt that said, I love running because I was determined to change my mindset.
Well, it worked.
It totally worked. I wore the shirt on every single run, whether it was 100 degrees or 30 degrees when we lived in Colorado. And anytime I found myself going down that road that I didn't want to go down, I pulled the shirt out from underneath my layer and I looked at it and I was like, why can't I run? Why can't I love running? Why can't I run with love? You know, that so many people talk about. So if I still had that shirt, I'd send it over your way.
Thank you.
So I caught your post this morning on Instagram about your final and 30th 24-hour water fast. And I just thought, we got to start talking about this because this is something that we're interested in. We've talked about intermittent fasting. We've played with it, definitely have entertained ideas of water fasts. But I love the consistency of the 30th. So I don't really know the story behind that or when you started. And I love that like it's 24 hours because I feel like you can do anything for 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been really interesting and fun and kind of spiritual. And I, like yourself, was playing around with intermittent fasting for the last couple years. I think it's kind of started as an evolution past like learning how to eat with a sattvic diet, which was part of some of my trainings with Dharma Mitra. And it just evolved, you know, it's like when you really get into plant-based foods and you get into just like the health of all of it, you can't help but start reading. And the work of Walter Longo was one of the books that I had read early on, although his fasting is different, and it's the fasting mimicking, and I think it's 5 or 6 days, which I think is going to be the next thing that I try. But long story short, I was reading a book for a friend of mine over this summer because she was like pre-diabetic. And it was one of I knew that you could reverse some diabetes through a carb-heavy diet, which I found fascinating. Of course, whole food, plant-based carbs or beans, we're not talking about like crackers or pasta or, just white food, that kind of thing. And so I decided to listen to the book while I was trail running. And part of what they got into was intermittent fasting, and they gave 3 options of ways to do it. And you can just shorten your feeding window, right? So you can, what is it, like 16:8? Is it 16:8? Is that the math?
Yep.
Right. So I had done that kind of feeding window before, where you're eating for the 8 and resting for the 16. But I was always intrigued by the 24-hour water fast because I had done it once. And I thought, well, if I'm going to tell my friend to do it, the food in this book was it's Mastering Diabetes was the book that I read, and they did kind of like an 80-10-10, so 80 carbs, 10 fat, 10 protein, give or take. And so I gave it a try, hoping I could inspire her. Not that I had diabetes, but it was still an interesting thing. And I was thinking about doing the water fast. And one morning I woke up, so I had this on my mind, and another yogi who was a vegan had tagged me about doing a water fast to raise awareness for like an animal liberation or the suffering of what goes on in factory farms. And I thought, well, okay, I just woke up. I wasn't planning on doing it, but why not? So I gave it a go as the 24 hours, and I knew it would be a little hard for the first 24 hours because you've got that habit of eating and enjoying food and being attached to it and all those kind of things. And I thought, wouldn't it be an interesting kind of experiment if every time I felt a hunger pain, instead of thinking about food or what I wasn't getting, think about how I could be a better vegan advocate. And so that was my practice for 24 hours. And of course, it went longer. Like if you're going to do a 24-hour fast, what I've learned is you can do it right, after dinner and then go just 24 hours. But since I had started in the morning and then went to that same 24 hours the next morning, it was more like a 36-hour fast, like it was longer. And that's harder. I don't like that. But so anyway, I did it, and I thought, well, that was kind of interesting. And then the next week happened, and I was like, you know what? Try it again. And the next thing I knew it, this was my 30th. So why am I stopping on 30? I'm stopping on 30 because we were talking a little off the air, but I have an umbilical hernia, which I have to go back and repair again. I've repaired it once, and this time we're going back and sewing up the diastasis recti, which is a bigger surgery. And, everyone I've talked to is very freaked out about, doing any water fasting before a surgery, which I wonder if somebody who studies water fasting would feel that way. But so everyone said, don't do it for 2 weeks prior. So this is going to be my 30th, but I thought it was kind of interesting because 30 is almost like a month, and it's been 30 days, at least this half year of not eating.
So 30 days. Yeah. I guess in my mind, I was like, it's one day of the month, but you've been doing it weekly. Yeah. Which is exactly what your post said. You've been doing it weekly for 30.
Consecutively. Yeah.
Yeah.
So once a week, either Wednesday or Thursday. And tomorrow it's supposed to snow, and I wanted food on a snow day. So I just was like, all right.
What were some of the attachments that you were noticing? Because yoga, which is really the foundation of our conversation, is so much more than, the gymnastics on the mat. And although that is like incredibly powerful, it's one of the limbs. But there's all these teachings too that go with these limbs. And one of the biggest ones is detachment. So what were you seeing, or what was the attachment that you were seeing to food?
Oh, I have a sweet tooth. Like I get addicted to certain things, like rituals. And I then replaced the ritual with a water fast. Like, you just have to swap your rituals for something, I guess, better. But definitely like hot cacao drinks that I make, like a cocoa, I'll do sometimes the Four Sigmatic with some fresh almond milk and warm it up. And it's so good. So definitely that. I have a habit of doing like a sprouted buckwheat with a brand called Food Nerd, but I absolutely love their stuff. So those are the things I was like, oh, I need to try that. Oh, I missed that, or just like these things. And what I found was that hunger, pain or whatever, your body adapts to doing this and knowing, okay, once a week it's just not going to eat, so I'm not going to freak out anymore. But those were almost calls of habits, like my body reminding myself, oh, you go down and you eat something. But definitely it was definitely like the buckwheat. Those are my things, my smoothies. Like, there's just habits, and dates. I love raw dates. So those are definitely my attachment foods.
And so you feel the desire, right? So this is the whole separate or creating of the space between that stimulus and response. So you feel the urge to eat, you insert it, you have a space there, you insert it with, for you thinking about the animals, and then you curb that desire. And so then you go through the 24 hours and then you repeat it the following week. Did you find, as you were working through these, after 2, after 3, after 4, it became much more the habit in the opposite direction? Like, you could just do a water fast for 24 hours, and now you've created this,
yes,
automated system again. Now you've created this that you can just tick off.
Yeah, it's fun to jump into it. It's funny because my husband often follows diet things that I do, and he watched me do about 20 of them before he tried to join in. But it's so funny because, since I cook like dinner in the house or whatever, you'd go through this like water fast, but then I was still on his mom. So I was like, okay, I'm still going to figure out what dinner is. Even if we order something, you still have to smell it. You still have to sit next to it. But I found that it became like it's so easy. Like, it's not a big deal anymore. Like, sometimes I haven't felt hungry. I probably won't feel hungry till like 6 tonight. It's just the way it is. The body kind of adapts to it, I think, just like anything else. But when my husband started doing it, all of a sudden I had like his feedback of, okay, I'm starving. When is this going to be over? And like his mind, like he wasn't taking the same yogic approach, we'll call it that, to the fasting. And like he's eating like he's gonna starve or something in the 24 hours. And then he's catching up. And then he didn't join me on the last one because he knows I'm stopping now. And it's like, it's not his desire to do it. It was my desire to do it.
That's so...
Let's face it, the guys, are waiting for the wives to like take charge. I mean, it's how many times have I like said, oh, I'm just going to hold off. And then Jess does it and she's already a few weeks in. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm on board. We just have to like this delay, just a little delay.
It's funny. But, the one more thing I wanted to throw out that I thought was an important thing about doing the fast just for health is that with COVID right now, and with whatever micro exposure you are getting, if you are going out and going to the store, whatever you're doing, I think having the body resting from digestion for 24 hours is a really helpful thing for the immunity during just this, exposure to the virus and different variances. Is that what they call it? With the different kinds, strains that are out right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm curious to know, in the intermittent fasting that we've done, I think the longest I've gone is maybe 17 or 18 hours, which, it's like, hello, I have the information right there that I can do a water fast for 24 if I can go 18, and love it. That's the thing. Love it. Like, I love seeing the impulse and the craving and the sensory pull. And I love working with the mind and sitting in that impulse and being an inquiry about it. And I'm curious to know about experiences that you had as far as like hyper alert states or deeper meditations or your actual asana physical practice. Did you feel a deepening in any of that because of just the not having that additional thing for the body to do?
Right. I think because usually what we do on our fasting days is we hike. And I'll do yoga or I'll hike. And towards the end, I was hiking more. Like the last time I went hiking with my husband, and then a friend of mine wanted to hike. So we hiked like 8 miles altogether. And I found that I had a lot of energy because it is only 24 hours. It's not really a long time, but I think it was more the long duration. Like, I experienced my body getting way more flexible. And I think it is because my body had an opportunity to kind of clean itself out once a week. I think maybe some of the inflammation or whatever it was holding on to was different. As far as meditation, it's curious because this week I've had a lot of stress over going and doing this surgery. I'm really stressed out about it. It's going to be like 3 months of not working out, which stresses me out. I'm sure you can relate. Yeah, so I'm not one to sit still, and that part of it is very terrifying for me. And so I had gone to a friend of mine who is this Reiki healer. I don't know, have you ever done Reiki?
I have. I've received it. Yes.
Okay. Or is that what it? I had never done it before, and I had zero expectations. And a part of me was like, I don't know if this is legit or not. I don't. It's like you never know when you're dealing with someone spiritual if you're getting someone who is authentic. Like you just don't. You just don't know, right?
It can be a total circus.
And so I had zero expectations, and I went, and it was this crazy, like beyond crazy, like metaphysical, spiritual experience that exceeded like any yoga nidra, any time where you get those brief glimpses. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while when that stuff happens and you're just like, whoa, what happened? And she had said something to me like she had never gone that far either. Like it was very, very bizarre. And I was very tired for like a day and a half after. It was really intense. But I think having that prep of the body being receptive to just like not eating, to slowing down, to being clear of just whatever excess toxins, even if you do eat a clean diet, I think set a nice foundation for that experience. So I think that's probably how I've seen it. And as far as yoga and stuff, like the only time I see an extra amount of energy for some reason in yoga or whatever activity is when I have squash. I don't know why. Like maybe it's something I don't get enough of. But anytime I have squash, like the next day it's just like, why am I flying right now? Why can I do all this? Why does it feel weightless? Always have a yellow squash before.
That's so interesting. I
so
love
it's not
it.
on the 24-hour water fast, but that's
right.
That is you got
clearly.
Follow the fast with squash. I don't know if that's true or not, but
yeah. So you haven't. So when's the last time you ate? Because you said you haven't.
I guess last night somewhere between 7:45 and 8.
Okay. So then you'll probably have dinner tonight?
Yeah,
like how do you
I'll break
these
then.
fasts?
What's the first food you have?
Well, according to the book, you're supposed to break it with something more carb, like bean heavy. Like they'll say like have a full meal, like, whatever, something just that's very, I don't know, like legumes and like just filling, but robust. I will break it with buckwheat because I'm addicted to buckwheat.
Sprouted cacao,
buckwheat,
and squash.
pretty much. Yeah, no. So I do. I have a butternut squash lentil soup in the refrigerator, which I'll probably eat. But but I'll probably have the buckwheat first, and I probably will top it off with a cacao thing after. But it's good. Like if you can just time it so that it works well with your day. I started a plant-based support group for our town. So I'm going to be talking about sprouted foods at 7 o'clock, which would be great. And then I'll break it after. But as long as you eat something, because otherwise it'll disturb my sleep. Like if I run on too empty, I won't need that much sleep. I don't know if you noticed that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
But I haven't really thought about it.
I love this. Well, I mean, I'm sure BJ's thinking the same thing. My God, we're
going to do it tomorrow.
We had Rip Esselstyn on a few weeks ago, and then we were like, okay, no oil. Now we're going to be fasting 24 hours once a week. And I'm like, what's next? Like, what else do I have to give up?
But yeah, it'll be interesting, especially with the triathlon. See how that shifts, and like when you fit it in. Like, does that fall on a recovery day or something? That's a lot easier.
I would think so, probably to ease into it.
We tried that juice fast. We tried a juice fast for the second round during the height of an Ironman training block.
So
we were like 8 or 10 weeks out, and I think we got through because we were so excited that it was so successful the first time, and the second time I think we got through 12 hours or 18 hours, and we're like, this is not good because we're trying to train still,
Yeah.
But I think to your point, I think it'd be super important to really back way down on the body's intensity, not to put that into a state of crisis mode where it needs food, but also there's stuff out there where athletes are going out fasted for workouts at a top level to see how their body uses the fuel that they have.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I think playing with it, right?
Yeah, once you get used to it, once you get to the point where it's not a big deal to do it, then it's probably a lot easier to start feeling confident with your energy level, like before trying something really intense, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I love the idea of a long barefoot beach walk or going for a hike, like being in nature, being in connection as opposed to just, fasting and like watching Netflix all day. Like being like...
Get away from the snacks.
Yeah, like exactly. Just like staring at the cabinet, But I love your husband's experience too, because it gives people permission. It's just like, have your experience. That's something that Beach says all the time. Like, just have an experience, right? So maybe your experience was tilted a little bit more towards the spiritual awakening, and your husband might have just been watching the clock like, oh my God, when can I eat? I'm freaking starving.
Yeah, he's like, what do I get from this? Am I going to lose weight? Like, why am I torturing myself?
I love that. And it's perfect. It's perfect. It's like, you did it right and he did it right. Have an experience. I think we're so scared sometimes to put ourselves out there to have an experience when even it's just us that's having the experience, right? And then it's bigger, like, oh, I don't want to start the podcast because I'm worried about the judgment or what people are going to think. And I think actually this is something that I wanted to ask you about as we start to segue into your story and into yoga as vegan. I've been interested, and you can kind of answer this maybe along the way, but an inquiry that I had was because being vegan and being a yogi for quite some time now, and when I say yogi, it's like I'm doing the very best I can with the tools that I have to live these limbs, to live the teachings, to share the teachings, and really be the demonstration, while also navigating this life as a human and honoring that. Have you received any kind of backlash or emotional defense from people about their choices and the history of yoga being more lacto-vegetarian?
Right. Not as much as I expected.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. Does that mean I'm just not getting out enough? At what point are they going to start throwing? It's true. So I think we were talking off the air a little bit about Clubhouse, and that's where all of a sudden it's like we're doing an audio experience and people have the opportunity to talk about it. So I'm seeing that element is going to start coming into the conversation more. But I think it's in the way that you approach it. And something that's been important to me about this project is that it's not about I'm saying yoga is vegan, and if you're not vegan, you're not practicing yoga. Like, I'm not coming down heavy-handed or saying like this is the way it's supposed to be. Instead, what I've looked at the project as my experience, like just like we talked about with everyone having a different experience, my journey towards enlightenment or liberation is going to be a different journey than yours and a different journey than BJ's. Like, it's all going to be different. And I think the same goes for the lineage of yoga, because there is not one particular practice to get to this state of liberation, right? There's a whole bunch of different types. So I always worry when I hear one teacher say, you have to follow X, Y, Z to get here. It has to be this way because that was the way that worked for them. It doesn't mean there isn't another door to go through. But at the end of the day, I believe, especially in the time we're living in, which is 2021, that if yoga at its heart, in its main tenet, is that of one of compassion or nonviolence, right? Then our relationship to the cow, which was supposed to be this divine creature in India, right? We no longer have a cow for our own, home like we would like a dog or a cat and share this experience. We now have a different relationship where we're taking from these animals. And the way that we're doing it isn't at an Ahimsa farm, right? Because some people will say, well, if you're doing it right with the, loving compassion, then that's okay. But that's not our reality in 2021. So what I'm saying by yoga is vegan is that at its heart, at its highest place of compassion, it is one of nonviolence. And living a vegan lifestyle is in itself the same as yoga because we are trying to cause the least amount of harm. And it's not about me shaming somebody else who isn't there in their yogic journey, because I was not vegan when I started yoga. And if somebody had told me I had to be, I probably wouldn't have done it.
How did you find yoga? How did that come into your life?
I was one of those people who thought I needed more, I'm sure you hear that a lot. Well, actually you do. Yeah. And you run triathlons. And now I do still kind of feel like I need something different. But for a while, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, so it was a long time ago, 17, 18 years ago, it's like you felt like you had to be doing, I don't know, yoga for when you're pregnant, felt like the right thing to do. So I found this, I think it was like a tape at the time, like a VHS tape or
VHS.
Of Rainbow Mars. That's who it was. She had some pregnancy DVD or whatever. And so I practiced that. And then when I had my daughter, I ended up making close friends with this woman who was doing private yoga. And so we started going to yoga classes. And that became like my kind of, spirituality / workout. That's when I was first introduced to it. And the spiritual element came rather quickly because my husband and I didn't know what to do with our daughter when she was a baby for like Easter, because we weren't really religious people. And he found this place called the Self-Realization this fellowship. And it was right because I used to live in California as well. So we went out to the Pacific Palisades to Lake Shrine, which is this beautiful, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's this beautiful lake that used to be a movie set. But the idea behind this yogi's teaching was that all religions were welcome. And we thought, well, that's a really nice place. So that was my first book that I read, was Autobiography of a Yogi. But it all kind of came together in the first year. And then I just started diving in from there.
When did you know you wanted to be a teacher, or how did that reach out and bring you in?
Yeah, well, it's funny. We were going to this studio called Black Dog Yoga, and I had a bunch of friends. This is when my girls finally started going back to preschool and kindergarten. And so you had a few hours where you could actually do what you wanted to do. And we were taking all these classes, and we just were going like 5-6 times a week. And they offered a teacher training, and a girlfriend of mine, I just decided to do it. Like, okay, let's try it. So it was really scary. And, I did my first 200 hours and realized I knew absolutely nothing. It's like, okay, I'm humbled now, and taught. I was lucky to be asked to teach at the yoga studio after I did my training. So that was kind of a nice experience that I got thrown right into it. But it took a long time to really feel comfortable teaching.
Oh my God. I think the first lesson of Ahimsa is, as a new yoga teacher, not to judge yourself, because I said earlier, like, yoga can be a bit of a circus. Like, it can be downright, like, so scary.
Yes.
Yeah. BJ is also a teacher too.
instant forgiveness of yourself. Like, I had gone to Jess's class for years. Like, I know the practice. And then you go into the teaching program, and like the first day they put you up there and you're like, I don't know how to teach. Like, I don't, I know like, the
how
moves.
How do you say step your right foot forward? All of a sudden it sounds really hard.
And not yell at them, or sound like you're like a robot,
or
down
mumble.
dog.
Right. It's such a, but that's where I grew the most. I don't know if you can share with that, but that's where I grew the most as a vocal human, not so much reserved into what I wanted to say, but instead composing my words and speaking my mind, and the words would flow. And so that for me was an opening. It was an entry into the life I am now, where I can just speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think podcasts do that too. All of a sudden you have to be really mindful of your words. You're like, what did I say? It's really scary to teach a class when you're a new teacher. Like, I remember just putting the classes together was such an ordeal. And then plus the added sound. Like, if you taught at a studio where they expected a playlist, that's a lot. Like, to be DJ and composer of whatever, type of yoga class you wanted to, deliver that day. It's a lot of work. And I honestly like practicing now, like with Dharma Mitra, Dharma Yoga. I'll be creative to a certain degree, but when I practice my own at home, I often will follow like set just sequences. Like, there are some sequences that I really like. Same thing with Ashtanga. I've done that, on and off for years, but I kind of like that you just go and you're going to dive into the physical practice, but you don't have to like worry about it being something completely new. And for me, I find that's when I can go deeper, because I can really connect the drishti, which is where you're looking, the breath, right? And then the movement, without worrying so much about the physical and starting to kind of guide through it. That's where I find that more helpful as my practice just changes.
We are so aligned with that. And I feel really blessed that the man that taught us, like our yoga mentor, that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, very much that story, used to own radio stations. And he had all these statistics around how radio stations, like how their listenership is this very, very specific demographic. So he always taught us to teach and bring to yoga no music.
Oh, and that's nice.
Yes. And because he had all this, he I don't know what the percentage is, but it's like, if you have a class of 30 people, you're lucky if if one or maybe two of those people are liking every single song on your playlist. But the majority are not, which means you're creating disconnection. And a yoga teacher is there to connect. And I mean, it was just mind blowing. And talk about pushback. He experienced a lot of pushback, and I would see it in yoga teacher trainings as like I would go on and study. Like, he would get like, oh boy, someone would be like, but it helps people feel better, and and bringing it back to the essence of yoga. But yes, that's still outside of you. And so anyway, fast forward to coming here to California and trying to teach with no music and having 80% of my class walk out. I mean. Whoa.
They're hard in it. That, you know what? It's a tough audience in California.
And you would not think that.
No, but can I share like my
Please.
worst horror
Yes, for
sub
sure.
class event ever? It was so good too, because I'm so lucky to have had it. So when I was teaching at the studio, I have a strong practice, but I was never one who could command a press-up handstand. Like I could do it once in a while, it would work out, but I wasn't the floaty perfect. Like there are just some masters of the body. And I fell somewhere in there where I was going to those classes, right? And I wasn't at that same level. I was a little under that level. But one of the teachers was Bryony Smith, who do you know who she is?
I don't know
Like it
that
was
name.
Dyson Bry, and you might remember because you've been teaching a long time, but this was I don't know, 10 years ago or 9 years ago, but Equinox did this beautiful video before you saw all these gorgeous videos of this girl in this New York apartment, and she's doing this beautiful practice and it goes viral and she's on this calendar, and the next thing I know she's everybody's following her and she's on all the yoga magazines. They asked me to sub that class.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was right after that video went viral. So it was one of those I guess I'll say yes because it's still weird if I said no because I'm too green, and I will. And then all these people come showing up for this class for this woman who's just this beautiful yogi. And here I am sitting there as a sub. And so some of them just walked in and walked out.
I know. And you're like, you have no idea how difficult it is going to be for me to teach now.
Yeah, it sucks for me more than it sucks for you.
Yeah, it's like the worst moment of your life. It's the like you're burning in the fire of purification, and you're like, you asked for it because you're seeking a path that is not for the faint of heart.
Oh my gosh. So I love sharing that because I don't think it gets much worse, but I'm sure people have stories like that.
Oh my gosh. I most certainly do. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So you're on the yoga path. Where does your shift to turning vegan come in?
Well, it shifts from going plant-based to vegan in 2016. And that coincides with my beginnings of my upper level trainings with Sri Dharma Mitra. Prior to that, when I started yoga, I had some health issues and started looking into forks over knives, reading the China study, starting to do my homework and get into that plant-based movement, whole food, plant-based, no oil type of food as a way to help make myself healthier and to avoid getting on medications, that kind of thing. And so when I did my first teacher training, I committed to being vegetarian because I was too scared to go vegan. And I figured, well, the yogis used to be vegetarian, so that makes sense. And so it was great because there were some really kind yogis who happened to be vegan who kind of was like, oh, if you're vegetarian, it's not really great for the cows, and started explaining to me about the rennet and different products. But I still needed a gentle stepping stone. And so I kind of went about 95% plant-based until 2016. And that's when I just made the shift in the heart as I see it. It became, an added element of embracing Ahimsa and being kind and compassionate towards all beings. So it extended past just my own selfish reasons for being plant-based, and then extended on to the movement. So that Dharma Mitra does his trainings, you have to be vegan while you do your trainings. There is a specific diet that goes to him. That's why one of the reasons why I love what he does, and he does it vegetarian for the 200 hours, but then once you get into the 500, 800,000 hours, it's vegan. And so I didn't know it was a sattvic diet and there was going to be all these other restrictions.
Explain what that sattvic diet is, or what sattva is.
Yeah, so a sattvic diet is one that is, I want to say, more of a calming vibration, and I think that's a nice way to think about it. like you want to eat a sattvic diet that isn't either tamasic or ragistic, meaning ragistic being like energetic, like your caffeines, your stimulants, your alcohol, like all these things that are going to, just make the nervous system go up and down in spices and stuff like that. And you don't want heavy tamasic dead food as well. Like, and I'm saying dead, you could include like animal products, but you could also look at it as far as processed food, heavy foods, sweet foods, devoid of nutrients. So think like opposite of sprouted foods. And so a sattvic diet, and the reason why we were on a sattvic diet was because during our periods of homework, there was a lot of spiritual discourse. You're waking up, you're thinking about a yama, you're either journaling about it, meditating about it, you're moving on to pranayama, the breathing practices, you're moving on to, the physical practices, and you're doing karma yoga. And so it is a beautiful complement to that practice. And the removal of like this sattvic diet, so there's no spices, no garlic, no onions, no anything, just no spices at all. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm not going to be able to do it. And you're just eating like plain food, and it's steamed or raw. You could eat sprouted almonds. That was the only kind of like fat or nut in the beginning, with the exception of avocado. So sprouted almonds or avocado were like your extra delicious foods. Dates were out, so nothing dehydrated or had to be fresh, and steamed or like just on closer towards being a live food, a higher vibration. You did that for the first 3 months, and then once you got past that, then they allowed, they went on the wild side.
It.
Yeah. Well, then you're like, oh my gosh, I can have tahini. This is fabulous. It's amazing. Like you're like, oh, that's big. But it was really interesting to see the big shift in the body doing something like that. So yeah, the sattvic diet is really geared towards being in a higher vibrational or more receptive space, so that you can, declutter the mind, right?
Did your taste buds change at all when you returned to maybe a more, let's say, normal day-to-day diet, maybe with spices and that you can recall?
Yeah. I mean, we could have a cheat day, which was great. So once a week I would have, I don't know, something, I'm still vegan, but something flavorful. So I don't know. I still like spices, but I think what it allowed me to do was understand the nuances of food without the extra spices. But I still enjoy spiced food just as much. And I wasn't doing a lot of garlic or onions. I was eating more of a sattvic diet pre-pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, probably makes more sense to pull in those onions, those garlic, stuff like that. And then, of course, because the family was home all the time and dinners became a bigger deal, I think that's kind of where the diet got a little bit different, because I had to make everybody in the house, somewhat satisfied.
So I'm listening to you. You're so eloquent in your words, by the way. Like the way you speak is just, you can feel that ahimsa, you can feel that kindness and that compassion that just, it's the energy from which you move. And that might sound a little bit like I'm proselytizing you, but people may look at your picture and say, look at this gorgeous woman and listening to her gorgeous voice, and she's talking about this sattvic diet, and now she's fasting. But I think it's important, and I've done some research, and we've known each other from a distance for a few years now, that you did not come from a foundation of this high vibrational food and way of life. And so I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch upon really this generational cycles that which I believe, of course, like that you came here to overcome, that you've done so beautifully, that has brought you to this eloquence that you now speak and live.
Well, that's nice of you. Although my kids, I'm going to be 100% true, because my girls are like, who is that on the podcast?
I love that, because you're still in a human body. If you were not Like if we're in a body, we got stuff to work on.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because when I started out, and it's like when you're speaking and you're in a microphone, I speak slower because I'm more careful of my words because I'm really conscious of screwing up and not sounding intelligent. Like it's true. Like it's just, you're like, oh gosh, I couldn't think of that word or I feel stupid. So if you go a little bit slower, I think that helps. But yeah, my kids do make fun of me, but I came from a really crazy background, which was it's like the Reiki the other day, as I called it. I was like, I need an exorcism. Can you perform that, please?
It's awesome.
I laugh, but it's true. Yeah, I grew up in a very abusive, alcoholic home. And I grew up in a lot of fear. And while I have a lot of, I try not to hold on to resentment because it's not helpful. Although I will say I really battle anxiety because of it. Like, I don't want to blame it, but either I'm wired that way and it didn't help, or, or it somewhat caused it to a certain degree. And this is something I'm going through right now with the whole blood pressure was something, because my blood pressure will still go up when I get anxious. And my diet couldn't be any cleaner. I'm here to tell you. But that's where the mental and the spiritual come in. But I think when you grow up in kind of an environment that doesn't feel good, it gives you an opportunity to either repeat the same mistakes or to change them. And I saw myself as a protector because, like I said, my dad, who I adored, struggled with alcohol. He had a liver transplant. So, I mean, he earned that liver transplant, which that's another subject. That's another subject. Did you deserve a liver transplant? Probably not, because, I'm sure there was someone with hepatitis that wasn't in a coma, that didn't, it's just like it just moved into it. And it was a really unfortunate situation. And then he got lung cancer. But I had this golden opportunity of watching that and living in it. And I was very dark for a long time because I was angry. And being able to look at that and go, well, maybe that's a lesson. Maybe if you think of the reincarnation, right? Maybe the reason why I went through the things I did was to then pass through them and change. You could look at it and go, well, I could have done some really crappy things in the past. Maybe that was the reason why I signed up for it. Or maybe this is some great lesson that we're all going to live in some, and my parents are a spiritual player, and they took the role of like, this is going to be a really hard lesson. It's a really nice way to think about it. Do I know if it's true or not? No, I don't, but it helps, and I think, just being somebody who goes through something like that, then it allows you to have compassion. Like, that's one thing I wish my girls had more of. And I think when you grow up in a household where there isn't yelling, screaming, fighting, crying, you're not scared, like all these lovely things, you don't always have the same amount of compassion for people who are going through something. And so my girls have each had friends where it's like, well, of course this kid is acting out right now. You mentioned that her home life is horrible, or like, it's like we've got this one, my daughter's got a friend in the pandemic, and I know that girl is living in just a horrible, like if I was locked at home during the pandemic and my childhood, I don't know what would have happened. Because we had escape. Like, you get to go to school, you get to go out with your friends. Like, there are times of escape, but there's a lot of people right now who may be in a home that's dysfunctional, and the pandemic's not making it easier. And so it's like trying to go, okay, yes, you should protect yourself and not invite too much drama into your life. But at the same time, have compassion, or maybe let that person know, like, hey, if you're struggling, it's okay. Like, but it's hard. It's hard to transfer that, because I think sometimes you need to experience it in order to have some sort of compassion for it.
Right. And I think as a mom, as a parent, it's like trusting, right? That they're going to learn what they need to learn while they're here.
Yeah.
And says the woman who doesn't have children. But everybody else I know has them. And we talk a lot about it, this balance between, allowing them to have their path fully and trusting, that they will, like, nobody gets a free pass, that they will come to all of the lessons that they're here to learn, and to be able to provide them with a house that is safe. But that was me. When my meditation teacher slid in the suggestion that I needed to be more, maybe I should get curious about compassion, I was like, I looked it up. I had to look it up. And I was like, I want nothing to do with that. Like, feel the suffering of other people. So I came here to cultivate, like, one of the things I came here to cultivate and learn is compassion. And oh man, have I received my waves of life and life experience and interaction to cultivate that in a very powerful way in a very short period of time.
Yeah. And I'm sure veganism had some sort of play.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Huge. Yes, huge.
Our visit to Farm Sanctuary when we traveled across the country a few years ago was a truly enlightening moment to see, these beautiful beings up close, and we volunteered for a whole week and just really dove into it.
Oh, that's nice.
So our time at Farm Sanctuary just really blew the roof off of or at least I'll speak for me, my relationship with the animals and veganism. I was plant-based and doing the stuff for the body, but then I believe firmly there's being up close with animals in their natural state and seeing how large they can be and how compassionate their eyes are really just paves the road to, this Ahimsa practice and love of all life.
Yeah,
so
I
beautiful.
think you're right. That's one of the tragedies of the pandemic is that the farm sanctuaries are not being utilized,
Yeah. So I want you to just share, I want to talk about the event that you and I are sitting on a panel together, which is going to be super cool, I think.
I think it's going to be great.
I think it's going to be
it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. Watch out. The world is bringing us together. And it's not just the Holly and Jess show. We are on the panel with some other people, and we're talking about yoga, ahimsa in real life. And some people might say, okay, well, I get it. Like, I understand the nonviolence with veganism, but what I learned, which I'm thinking maybe you had a similar experience, is that you realize that ahimsa is, it's not just one thing, right? It's like this foundational principle of yoga. It's everywhere. And I'd love for you to share if you have an experience or something where you started to realize, like, oh my gosh, like, I have an opportunity there for ahimsa. I have an opportunity there for ahimsa, that it just spans everything in your life.
Yeah, I think I have to credit it back to Sri Dharma Mitra, because we had to meditate on ahimsa for 30 days in the morning. And I have one tattoo. It's ahimsa. Which you can't see it on my arm, but there it is.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so it'll remind me right there. Like, in fact, my husband has more than once put my hand up and shown it to me.
Okay, now we're getting to the answer to the question I asked.
Right. Yeah, so I think just contemplating it, I think it's just the foundation. Like, I see ahimsa is the core of yoga, but it's also at the core of veganism. It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Okay. And I think that spoke volumes when you said, my husband will show it to me, right? Because we're still living in this human body. We're still living in awareness of these locked and loaded responses we have, or the self-preservation and the defense modes of the ego, where, we can maybe react in a way that is not ahimsa, and but without those, without the contrast of those moments, how do we grow? We have to have that. So I think there's ahimsa is also the grace in the development of being aware on your own path, that, our teacher has this thing that he gave to us early on in working with him, is just, you get better and better every day in every way. And it sounds so corny, but how many times I have worked that statement in a moment where I want to react, and the reaction that I want to have, or the defense that I want to put out there, I see as an opportunity to get better and better every day in every way.
Yeah. I agree. It's hard, but it's hard not to screw up ahimsa multiple times a day, right? It's just life.
Yeah.
It is.
But it helps when you're not ingesting, the violence and the oppression. And I know you had Sean Korn on your podcast, and we had her on ours. And one of the things that I really took away when I listened to her book was our liberation is bound. And that's another theme with Dr. Will Tuttle, who you had on your podcast, which I can't wait to listen to that one, because BJ and I were able to see him speak live when we were in Ithaca, New York. What a beautiful man. And, the World Peace Diet is not a diet, but yes, it is a diet, but it's a book that I've spoken about many times, referenced many times on this podcast, that really, if we want to see peace on earth, or the end of violence here, it starts with us and what we're putting into our bodies and also into our minds.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So you and I are actually coming together because I'm going to be on your podcast, which is super cool.
I know. I can't wait. And it's going to be a good one too. It's
going to be amazing.
It's going to be really good.
It's going to be really good. No pressure for either of us.
No,
we'll probably put it all out there and then have a podcast hangover.
Yeah, but it's good for us. It's good that we're on a panel together, because, we are of similar mind.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. So the Yoga Goes Vegan all-day gathering and retreat. And it is a co-production between Yoga is Vegan and our friend Victoria Moran, Main Street Vegan, and also the Integral Yoga Institute of New York City, which is, one of the OG studios in the States. What an honor. I'm so blessed to be a part of this. And so what do you want to share with people about that? Or who is this for? Who is this retreat for?
Well, I think anytime you do something that's a vegan event, right, you're going to get both. You're going to get the yoga person who's just really thankful it exists because they're vegan. You know what I mean? Oh, okay, you guys get it. But I think it's a really big deal, because the Integral Yoga Institute, they've really had their roots in vegetarianism for a long time as well. So to be able to then lift it up from a lineage, that's accepting it and saying, why don't we try it? It's the same thing. We're not going to tell you you're bad if you don't, or you're wrong, or you're a bad yogi, or we're more, spiritual or whatever. But let's look at the world that we live in today, and let's try to connect in the most yogic way possible. So for that to be coming from that force, and of course Victoria Moran, gosh, she does nothing but good all the time for so many, is a beautiful event. And I think we're going to just see a lot of different meditation, have moments to have talks and speak and connect with people and share and grow. And if anything, the yogic community has shifted and changed so much, because yoga studios are not the same right now. Large ones are no longer even with us because of the pandemic. So I think it's a beautiful day of opportunity to start to, maybe shift your vibration, whether it's learning and connecting with meditation, or hearing someone who's an inspirational speaker, or just getting started and feeling like you have a community that is there and has your back if you want to try and shift towards a vegan lifestyle.
Oh, I love how you said that. I just had a community that has your back. I love that. That's so inviting. And we'll have links to that, of course, in the show notes. But how do people follow you, get more of you and your message if they are aligning with your eloquent voice, with your transparency of sharing what your daughters actually think about what that voice is on the podcast? People that are just resonating with you. How do they get more of you, Holly?
Well, I think, go to yogaisvegan.com or follow. It's all under the same handle, Yoga is Vegan. And unless you're listening to the podcast, you're going to see me lifting other people up. It's not usually about myself there. And you can also find me under my name, like on Instagram, which is at Holly Skodis. That's probably the best way, or on Facebook. But you can find me there. And also, if you're on Clubhouse, you can find, we are doing some Yoga is Vegan talks in there, and it's under my name. So it's at Holly Skodis.
Cool. We're going to check out this Clubhouse thing. I like this.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely to finally have this this time with you. You've been in my awareness for the last couple of years since you asked me to write an article for the Yoga is Vegan blog, which I want to thank you personally. I don't know if I included this in my email, and of course I don't expect you to remember that when I sent you the article, that this was it was a massive, it was a yes from the start. It was a no hesitant yes, but it was like this wonderful experience to yes, I firmly believe that yoga is vegan. How do I write this article in a way that is inclusive, that is non-harming and non-judgmental and true to me and inspires curiosity and inquiry? And I just sat with it, and I think it was a while, and I felt the pressure of you need to get her this article. And one day I just knew here it is, and I just wrote it, and I was like, this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was important that you guys helped me out and did that too, because without everyone else's stories, Yoga is Vegan would be nothing. So
I revisited it yesterday, and the first lines talk about a tiny little spider that was walking across my laptop. And that was the day I sat down, I opened up the laptop, I took the breath, and I noticed the spider. And I was and I just gently kind of redirected him over into a succulent plant. And I realized 10 years ago, I would have, flicked him off the screen or blew him off the screen and not really cared about where he went or how he landed. But now that I recognized that the spider is a sacred being and a soul, and I was like, yes, thank you, spider. Let's go. Here we go. Let's start writing.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. It's really great. And thank you guys for having me on. I feel honored to be on, since I really can't run more than 5 miles, and I'm really slow.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I had a great time.
Yeah,
yes,
we are. If we are, navigating life as human beings, we are all endurance athletes, and that was a belief that I had at the beginning when YogiTriathlete was born. It's it wasn't me. It wasn't just triathletes. It's everyone. It's everyone who's navigating this very rich, I think I said it in the intro, very rich itinerary in life. There's so much that so much opportunity. And thank you for the opportunity that you gave everyone today to just be more curious about, where they can expand nonviolence and non-harm in their intent and within their day. So we appreciate it. And I will see you, I don't know if it's next week or the week after.
I think it's next week.
I think it is next week. And then I'll see you again when we sit on that panel. So have a wonderful rest of your fast today. And
Celebrate
I think
with
we're
some
all in.
cacao.
Are we all in?
I think we're doing it. I don't think we are.
But I am having cacao today, so it's not going to be today.
All right.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.